So this video is going to be about just generally how to use parameters and some of the tricks and some of the places where I see people get stuck. So if we start by looking at this model, we can take a look at the parameters that are in here, and you'll see that I've got a number of user parameters defined, like width, height, depth, plies, the plywood thickness in this case. Throughout this model, I'm doing things like this dimension is some equation that references a whole bunch of those parameters. And one of the things about using Sheeter is that, and it's unfortunate, but it's just the way that it is that when you sync to the sheet, it's just going to overwrite what's in this box. So if this box contains a formula, it's going to push to Google Sheets just the value 18 inches. And then when it downloads it, it's just going to be 18 inches. I've tried looking into making it where you could have the actual expression in the sheet, but it kind of takes away a lot of the value of having it in a spreadsheet, and so it just didn't work. So the kind of best method that I've got right now, which I really highly recommend, is the parameters that you have that are kind of the base parameters, like width, height, depth, ply, whatever. These are just values. Take these, make them favorites. Other user parameters, I have this other parameter, for example, right here, blind tab or blind pocket. Blind pocket is basically wherever there's a joint and it's not going to cut through the wood, I want it to be about 3/4 of the thickness of the ply. And I'm going to use this, I use this parameter blind pocket all throughout the model. But I don't want Sheeter to overwrite this little expression because I just want it to always be ply times 0.75. So you can see no star. Clicking the star makes it a favorite. Up here you can see I've just got kind of what I would call kind of the core parameters. These are the values that I actually want to be able to configure with Sheeter, and so I have all of them marked as favorite. And now let's take a look at using that. So let's go in and say, I'm just going to do this from the beginning as if I was just starting. So we'll just say link design to Google Sheet. I'm going to say I want to create a new sheet, and you see that there's this option in the new version that says favorite parameters only, and this is really the key. If you don't see this, download the latest. See the link below. But you want to check favorite parameters only in almost all cases. I just really think this is just really the best way to use it. You know, if you do all parameters, I mean, every single one of those equations in the entire model is going to get wiped out. The answer is really favorite parameters only. So let's go ahead, create the sheet, and we'll see what it looks like. So you can see what was created here now in the parameters tab of the sheet. I've got the part number description, as you've seen before in other videos. But now we just have this small subset of the parameters. And these are the key values that I want to change. So just for time's sake, I'll just quickly copy and paste from the last version I did of this. And you know, this is where you would really define the part numbers and descriptions and sizes for all of the different rows in the sheet. And again, each row in the sheet is what corresponds to the different size that you can change to in Fusion 360. So again, here I've just got small, medium, large, XL, various dimensions for just these key values defined here. And you know, the other thing I really want to point out, one of the big advantages, like I said, the way that Sheeter works is it just takes whatever the value of the cell is. So if you just kind of think about that for a second, that means that, and it does not mess with the values of the cells unless you use the explicit push option, which I would say probably don't ever do unless there's a really good reason. I probably talk about that in another video. But so let's look at this, for example. So shelf. So the shelf is the height of the shelf in the bookcase. So I don't really want to have to define this every time. I'm just going to say that for every size, let's just make it the height divided by 2. And so that's 10. And you can see I already had these values because I did it in the other sheet. But this allows you to use full spreadsheet formulas. I mean, you can get crazy with this. You could have other sheets you can add other sheets to this as long as you respect the names. Like the only thing that really matters is the names of these sheets. That's just the way I could do it. That's the way I did it. Don't change these, but you can add as many more sheets as you want. With Google Sheets, you can link to other spreadsheets. You could like link to other apps, do all kinds of crazy stuff. So these could be like lookups out of other sheets. These could be complex formulas. All the cells can reference each other with crazy equations. You can do all the regular crazy spreadsheet stuff that you would do. I mean, this is still pretty simple, but I think it really highlights the value of having some of these in sheets. And so one thing that I should note is that I just kind of emphasize the value of putting only favorite user parameters into Google Sheets. Another option would be to put, say, all of your user parameters, or if you really have a specific use case or you're crazy, you could put all parameters from the model in here. That is something I just almost never recommend anybody. But even if you put all the user parameters in here, and instead of defining, you can see, like, for example, this, right? Blind tab equals ply times 0.6. Now, I could have put all of my user parameters into Google Sheets and then, say, taken the equation for blind tab, ply times 0.6. I could have defined this equation in Sheets, right? If I had an equation in Sheets for blind tab right here, I could have said it equals, ply times 0.75, right? And I would have gotten the same value there. And then everything would have still worked the same. But I just think that, for me personally, I think that I want all of anything that's logic like this, where I want this pocket to be 3/4 of the depth of the ply. I want to define that equation in Fusion. I want to use the internal Fusion 360 methods for finding and defining. I want to be able to just have it compute the way it's supposed to. I don't recommend doing anything too significant in terms of the types of equations you would normally define in Fusion over in Sheets. Where I think you really get the power is maybe something quick like this, or more specifically would be these values depend on something else, right? I want to look up values in a different sheet. I want to look up values in a table. I'm doing some kind of import of a big parameter table of, I don't know, bolts or washer data or something that I could have in another sheet in here, and I just want to do a bunch of V lookups, H lookups, things like that. That's where I think you really get the power of putting the equation in the spreadsheet as opposed to Fusion. Now that I've defined those different sizes, we can see the values of the parameters are still the same as they were before, but since I've published the sheet, this is obviously the big value of Sheeter, is that now I can use either the change size. So now all those rows from the spreadsheet are in here. I can click large and it'll update just those few parameters. But since I built this model in such a way that all of the rest of the dimensions and is all dependent on those like 7 or 8 parameters, kind of the power of parametric models is that when I switch this size, which is really just saying read the values from the row, right? So from the medium row, read these few values of the parameters and then apply them, then you can see we get the different size. And if I go back to parameters, you can see that obviously these are now reflective of the values from the medium row. So hopefully all that made sense, and thanks for watching, and look forward to talking to you guys soon.